So just put into our minds some thoughts. Right now, you know, we can see our minds are running like trains at 100 miles an hour out of control, you know. And we just assume that's normal. And then whatever arises, we tend to think, oh my God, I've got to follow it. We feel like we're just this victim of it, you know. But we can put new thoughts into the mind. We can begin to train our minds to go in different directions. This is really a very simple way of saying what Buddha's approach is, because everything comes down to the mind. So we put some thoughts, some positive thoughts, as a starting point. We'll discuss this in detail, but the crucial thing is that it's the motivation, the intention, the reason behind what we do that determines the quality of what we do, not the thing itself. So let's think. Okay, definitely I want to be less neurotic, more clear, more wise, more relaxed, less jealous, less depressed. That's for sure. Well, we can achieve that. Buddha says all of that's our potential, just naturally. It's our potential. That's the development of the wisdom wing. And then that qualifies us to, you know, practice the compassion wing. We open our eyes and we see others and we realize they're in the same boat. So now, to some extent, understanding my own mind and my own suffering, I can help others. So think, this is why I'm here. Listen to what Buddha says, whether it's reiterating what I already am attempting to practice, whether it's the first time. And listen carefully, with my intelligence hat on, not my blind believing hat on. Listen to, think about, contemplate, discuss what Buddha says, to see if there are tools there I can use to develop this marvellous potential for my sake and the sake of others. Make the most of these 2 days. On the second 2 lines of this little prayer we're going to sing are sort of, you know, expressing this altruistic motivation. The first 2 lines are expressing our reliance upon the Buddha, so for those of us who sort of feel like we're Buddhists already, you can reiterate that. Sangye charang soke chognam la jancho badu dagni kyab suchi dagi chunyen gi pesonam ki drola penchir sangye dropa shog. Sangye charang soke chognam la jancho badu dagni kyab suchi dagi chunyen gi pesonam ki drola penchir sangye dropa shog. Sangye charang soke chognam la jancho badu dagni kyab suchi dagi chunyen gi pesonam ki drola penchir sangye dropa shog. So now, just for a minute or two, let's attempt just to focus on our mind. So just to get some perspective, you know, about what the mind is, just briefly, and then we can just do a couple of minutes of focusing. The mind, in Buddhist terms, and if you think about it, you've got to define your terms in order to discuss something. This is why we have so much trouble in our life, you know, we don't define our terms. We might do when it comes to cakes and you know, measurements and things. We've got to be clear what is this and what is that. When it comes to things like love, hate, jealous, good, bad, all this stuff of morality and spiritual practice, we don't define our terms, so we're all walking around in circles completely confused, you know. Or I will say, oh, I love you, and you'll say, yes, and I love you, and we actually think we're communicating. But, you know, if I write down what I mean by that and you write down what you mean, we've got different books there, expectations, all these things. You know, we define these things differently. So the mind, it's fundamental. If Buddha's dealing with the mind, you'd better be clear what he means by it. Because if you walk around thinking the mind is your brain, and Buddha says that you've got, your mind reincarnates, you really definitely think he's a wacko, and you have every right to go back and get your money back. So you've got to take as this hypothesis that it's not, you know. So the mind is defined as that which is clear, meaning not physical, and that which knows or cognizes or is aware. Is bare bones verbs, you know. There's no special meaning to those words, except their simple meaning of cognition. Mind is that part of you that cognizes. And indeed it cognizes in many ways. Your eye consciousness cognizes shape and colour through this eyeball here, you know. The consciousness is not the eyeball. That's the physical part, and all the nerves, etc. Ear consciousness is that part of your mind that cognizes through the medium of all this business here, sound. Touch consciousness is that part of your mind that functions through the medium of your nervous system and your skin and your body, etc., to have tactile experiences. So we need to be very precise, you know. Then you've got two. You've got sensory consciousness and you have mental consciousness. This is how, you know, the Buddhist model would describe. Remembering consciousness is a word that's used synonymously with the word mind, which is not the body, not physical. Interdependent, intimate relationship. To the point that if you didn't have an eyeball, you couldn't have eye consciousness, is obvious. So your capacity for your consciousness to function, to see things, depends upon the presence of a decent eyeball, etc. This we understand. This is the way to say it in Buddhist terms. So your mental consciousness, though, that's where the workshop is, as Lama Zopa says. That's what we need to become intimately familiar with. This is where our business is. So mind, its job, its function, which is finally what defines it, is to cognize, to be aware. To cognize what? Well, Buddha says, that which exists. This is a really crucial point for the Buddha. And in fact, so powerful is mind in Buddhist terms that it even defines what exists. It's axiomatic in Buddhist terms that that which exists is that which is cognized by mind, clearly valid mind, finally enlightened mind, fully developed mind. It's axiomatic that that which exists is that which is cognized by mind, and that which is cognized by mind, valid mind, finally, is necessarily that which exists. There's nothing outside that, because mind determines that which exists. It's a very different view, you know, from both the materialist view and the theistic views. So mind is everything for the Buddha. Everything comes from mind. Everything is created by mind. Not in the kind of magic wand sense of creation, in an evolutionary cause and effect sense. And it takes time to get our heads just technically around this. But the more we do, the more it reinforces all the other points that Buddha's making, you know. So right now, Buddha's saying, our minds are full of misconceptions, of fantasies, of wrong assessments of that which exists. So our minds are kind of clouded, distorted. So what we cognize now isn't that which exists. It's based upon that which exists. So like, you know, there is a chocolate cake. We all agree in conventional terms that brown triangle is a chocolate cake. We all recognize that, the English word for it. We've tasted it before. We recognize it. We all agree. It's a chocolate cake. There's no argument there at that level, on a conventional sense. Buddha discusses even how things exist conventionally. But given just the conventional reality of cups and saucers and ups and downs and goods and bads, a chocolate cake's a chocolate cake. It's not a carrot cake. It's not a piece of bread. That's cool. But what Buddha's saying is, we don't see barely a chocolate cake. What we see, if we have attachment for it, is a divine, delicious chocolate cake. That's how we would say what exists, such that a divine, delicious chocolate cake that definitely will give me happiness when I eat it, chocolate cake. That's the chocolate cake we see. If you don't like George Bush, you don't see the American man George Bush in just the bare fact. You see mean, ugly, horrible, distorted, looking like a monkey, the cause of all my suffering, stupid George Bush. Are you sort of seeing my point? If you don't like him. If it's Hillary Clinton you don't like, then however you define her is what you see. This is a simple way to say it. So there is a reality, but what, as Lama Zopa says, we're decorating on top of what is reality, qualities that aren't there, that our minds are imposing. But we don't think we're imposing. We don't sit back and say, well, there's this American person called George Bush, and I do realise that because of my deluded mind, I'm seeing a distorted picture. Looking stupid, but I really know it's just my mind projecting. Excuse me, we don't talk like that. We say, there is that person, and he is what I see. I mean, you can get what I'm saying. This is what Buddha says we are all doing all the time, and this is what causes all suffering, this dumping on top of things, added qualities. We can all hear this. We're not unintelligent. We understand exactly this concept. This exactly is what Buddha says is the mistake. That's it. This is the cause of all suffering. This is what when he says we're living in fantasy worlds. Everything is an illusion. This is what he means. Okay, the difficult part is he keeps, he is saying that we're projecting things at a very subtle level that we can't even hear. When we hear what he says, we don't get what he means. It goes to this projecting, this decorating on top, goes to extremely subtle levels, and we're going to just discuss. So the job of a person who's using Buddha's stuff in their life, is to know your mind intimately, deeply, unbelievably well, so that we can recognise this nonsense that our mind does, and we can extract fact from fiction. This is it. Enlightenment is a word that's used to refer to the state of a person's mind who has completely rid it of all the fantasies, of all the projections, of all the decorations, and is now cognizing that which exists as it exists. I mean, it sounds kind of a cute concept, seeing what exists. Oh, yes, interesting. But it goes to real subtle levels we're talking here. So it's a doable, practical job that Buddha is discussing. This is Buddha's practice. This is what Buddha means by spiritual practice. So clearly, if he's right, and in order to give him a go to find out if he is right, we have to take it as a hypothesis, to run with it. Then we need to know what the mind is, exactly. We need to know what the states of mind are, exactly. We need to distinguish, crucially, between the positive states of mind and the negative ones, because it's so-called negative ones that do this job of misconceiving things. We need to recognise them, because right now there's just this one big soup of emotion in here. Not just ordinary soup, but pureed soup. You can't tell one bit from another because it all just comes roaring up and we just run after it like, at 100 miles an hour. So it needs a lot of work to start to see it, to break it down, to deconstruct it, to understand it, to change it. And we are talking of going to incredibly subtle, refined levels of our minds to do this job, This is the job. This is the approach. So bad enough, as Lama Zopa Rinpoche says, that we see things in a way that isn't accurate. But the killer is we actually believe what we're seeing is true. This is the one that keeps us absolutely rooted in suffering. And so even to see that this is what we're doing is already like you've won the lottery, You think of a person, look at the world. Just look at the general behaviour of the world. When two people are fighting, forget yourself for a second. Just your friends. I'm not talking about the Palestinians and Israelis. I'm not talking about warmongers. Just your friends. Check them out when they're fighting. Or when one of them comes to you with, tears. He did this, and he said that, and he is this. You can already, even with your own little bit of wisdom, because it's someone else's situation, not your own, you can see that they're projecting. You can see that they're exaggerating. You can see that they're not seeing everything quite accurately. You can see that. And if you were just as simply, like as if someone said, as sort of as they came along and said, you've got 2 cups on your table, Robina, and you can see that you've got one, and you say, no, darling, I've only got one. They'd go, oh, sorry, yes, you're right. There's only one. Look. That's easy to see there's a mistake, isn't it? But look at how hard it is to even see that our minds are making a mistake. We can't. You say to the person, sweetheart, that's just your anger projecting, exaggerating, and it really isn't like this, and they did do this and this, but therefore you're seeing this, and they just think you're nuts. What do you mean? They did do that. They are that. So we don't even know. We can't even... So mostly, even if we understand these words about projecting, it's hard to see. The second the smallest thing goes wrong. We don't even see that we're doing this because we believe that it is like that. The person did do this. It is this way. The situation is this. This is the thing. And Buddha says this is just because we've been doing this mistake for eons. Deeply embedded in our mind. We're totally brainwashed, totally addicted to this, totally, utterly caught up for countless lives in seeing things this way, in misconceiving things and then believing it is that. It's like... We can all see. This is the way karma works. One of the ways karma works is simply in terms of it being a habit. You can see, even just a few days of doing something a certain way, already you're doing it automatically. Already it's just becoming instinctive in you. Well, these mistakes have been instinctive in our minds for a long time. We come fully programmed. The first second of conception, everything is in place, fully developed program. And these deluded states of mind, the neurotic ones, the mistaken ones, the negative ones, and we're going to discuss these, they run the show right now. Okay, we have love and kindness and wisdom to some extent, and they're the redeeming features of us. This is how come we're sitting here right now and not killing people. Because we're listening to those, better parts of ourselves and we're attempting to follow those. But look what a struggle it is, Because these negative ones, these deluded ones, these lying ones, these emotional neurotic ones, totally instinctive. And this is where, if we look too, and we can see in our culture, our modern, materialist world, all the models of the mind in this culture of ours that have developed the last, especially the last 100, since Freud, No, not even Freud. Whatever. All the views of the materialist world that have developed, since really the materialist, since the medieval times, when we began to separate scientific, what we call science, from the views of the Catholic Church, which ran the show back then in terms of reality in the European world. Gradually, we've sort of the materialist view, the so-called scientific one, has become the absolute truth, isn't it? Which is your mind is your brain, first point. Your mother made you. She's the creator, second point. And all these are the things, these views which we take as an absolute truth, which we never question, all these are the views that cause us to make it, that make it so difficult for us to listen to the Buddha's approach, let's say, which is utterly different, that your mind is yours, that it isn't physical, that your feelings and thoughts are, the stuff that we're all talking about. But the other, and make it so difficult to look inside and take responsibility. As I said, why should I? I didn't ask to get born. I didn't do it. It's not my fault. They made me. They did it. What's it got to do with me? But the other thing that just reinforces our suffering is this, the view that's held in all the materialist models of the mind that gives equal status to what we call the positive states and the negative ones. And you can use whatever words you like, but you don't have to be a rocket scientist to recognise. If we did a bit of market research in this room and had our little clipboard and I ask you questions, do you like being stolen from? Do you like being kicked? Do you like being lied to? How do you feel when you're jealous? Does it feel good? We're all going to have agreement. It's painful. Whether it's in you or you're on the receiving end, it's awful. Well, give it a reasonable heading. Give it, the term negative state of mind, if you like. Then you look at the positive ones. Again, do your market research. How does it feel to be given, to be given a gift? Do you like being, kind, people being kind to you? How does it feel when you're feeling kind? Everyone's going to agree. So it's not rocket science. Just even knowing that. So these states of mind, the painful ones and the pleasant ones, because if we look at children, we can see these instinctive responses just come. So because we have the view in the West that the mind is the brain, and instinct, it comes from DNA, and we track back people through the family, through the bodies, through the people, not from the mind itself. So then we say it's DNA, it's genes, it's this, it's instinctive, it's just automatic, it's all these things. And so then we would give equal status to these and say that's what a person is. A person consists of these, you know. You're extremely unusual person and remarkable. Let's say you're more like the Mother Teresas of the world, or the other side, you know, you're the Hitlers of the world. But we would all say a reasonable person has got a reasonable balance of these qualities. No one asserts that you can say get rid of all the stuff that causes suffering. We might agree jealousy, depression, anger are painful, but no one would ever say in the Western models that you can completely get rid of those. Let's locate. Because you see, we're saying it's the brain. We're trying to find the chemicals that relate to it. And then also, and we fiercely basically defend our right to have these things. And we've got this idea that you're a reasonable, balanced person. Some anger, some depression, some jealousy, some love, you know. Buddha disagrees. His view is fundamentally, radically different. He says, 1, mind is not physical. 2, doesn't come from anyone else. This is a ridiculous idea, he says. And that's my way. He doesn't say, he's not rude. I'm being rude here. Okay? Then third, the crucial piece, the essential, the heart piece for the Buddha, therefore, is that your mind is yours. So, like we said, you know, if we relate, the relationship between the external world and the internal is that the external world is a trigger for what's in here, whereas we would say it's the cause of what's in here. We would say that thing makes this come. Well, Buddha would say that thing triggers what's already there. That's the crucial point. Just like, you know, if Mozart's mummy could have given him the best Steinway on earth, but if there was no music in here, and we all get this when it comes to this kind of thing, music, for example, we understand it when it comes to this. We know, doesn't matter how many Steinways Mozart was given as a little boy, if he didn't have music within him, it wouldn't help. So we understand that. We know no matter how much water you pour on the earth and how much sunshine you give it, unless there's a seed under there, nothing will grow. We understand that. But when it comes to emotions, we don't understand it. We're confused. We're thrown by this assertion the mind is the brain and it comes from the mummy and daddy. We keep looking in the wrong direction, you know, stubbornly. And so then what Buddha's saying is your mind is not physical, doesn't come from anyone else. And the crucial point he's making, and we have to think about this until we can see the truth of it, or not, as the case may be. And then if you find out Buddha's wrong, you have to reject him, because why would you follow a person who's mistaken? How foolish. He is saying that the positive states of mind are innate. They're at the core of our being. And by inference, the negative ones aren't. This is a big surprise. This is a shock, in fact. So Buddha's therefore saying, concluding, we can get rid of the negative ones completely, 100%, to the point where there's not even an atom of an imprint, of a taste, of a tendency left in our minds of the negative states. And that's what he means by enlightenment. Okay, if you were to hear the qualities of a person who has accomplished that, that's where it sounds like wacko religion. Insane. Omniscient, that's the wisdom wing, knowing everything, seeing what exists. The mind pervades the universe. How can it not? It's not physical. How can it be confined by space or time or matter? Infinite empathy for all sentient beings. Infinitely powerful in the capacity to benefit sentient beings for as long as time exists. This is what Buddha says is the natural potential of every single mind that exists. So my Catholic mum was shocked by that, because here we're describing God, aren't we? So most theistic religions would say that's God and there's just one, and the rest of us are made by that, and we can become like that, but never that. So just a very different interpretation. Buddha says that potential is the potential of every mind, just naturally. It's just how it is. No one made it this way. And the reason we would want to become that is because it's who we are. There's no choice, you know. An acorn, what is it? It's a potential oak tree. You can't turn it into a rose bush. You can make it into jewellery if you like, but it's not what it really is. What defines an acorn, it's very simple, is its oak tree nature, isn't it? That's what it is. That's what it is. It's not a choice. No one invented it this way. You can't decide, oh, I think it's a rose seed. Oh, no, I think it's a glass of water. Oh, I can think what I like. Yes, you can, but try drinking water from an acorn. You'll be disappointed. Try getting a rose bush. You'll be disappointed. So you've got to find out what it is. And that's an establishable fact. And this is how Buddha would say there is objective reality. There is objective reality. It's not just, an opinion. Don't believe anything here. Check it out. So what Buddha's saying is this, that therefore, given that our mind is not physical, that it didn't come from anyone else, it's our own, and that's the key point, it's mine. That means I can turn it into what it really is. What it really is its potential goodness. Its potential goodness is what defines it, finally, and that's the positive qualities. And that the negative ones are not at the core of our being, are not finally natural, which is a curious concept, because we think they're so natural, in the sense that they're just there. It must be who I am. We define ourselves by that. And that's the big mistake. That's what keeps us rooted in our insanity. So how come? What is it? Why? What's the logic? What's the logic behind this? Because it's not just an opinion. But, if Einstein just has an opinion that E equals mc squared, or that relativity is right, or Mr. Thingamy says about gravity, if it is an opinion or speculation, then it's very nice of him to share his opinion with us. Thanks a lot, mate. But, we can all have opinions, and we all do. We're running around with opinions, Buddha says, and most of them have no bearing on reality. That's why we're all nuts. So we need to check up whether what Buddha's saying is fact or not. And this is a little bit scary, because we're a bit intellectually lazy. We'd rather just believe, I think. We'd rather just believe in something. It's a lot easier for us, we're lazy. We don't have, most of us, the discipline and the rigour of the scientific mind, which is what we do need to do. This is the Buddhist approach, and I'm not kidding. This is the way they, in the great monastic university tradition in Buddhism over the centuries, since the 7th, 8th century, this great monastic university in India called Nalanda. And that tradition has been carried over and developed and still alive in the Tibetan tradition, So the key to understanding how what's called negative states of mind are not innate and thus can be removed, and that's the method for getting happiness. The key to this is understanding the way the mind works, investigating how it works, how it functions. I was going to do a 2-minute observation of the mind, wasn't I? I'll do it later. And this just takes time to see, but let's talk about it. Remember, you've got the sensory consciousness and the mental consciousness. And already understanding the distinction between these and how they function is an eye-opener, is a marvellous in helping us see how our mind is ridiculous and making mistakes all the time, not seeing things as they exist. Understanding this helps us quickly see how what we're perceiving when we contact something is a fantasy projected by our own mind. For example, the one about the chocolate cake. When we can make the distinction between sensory consciousness and mental, then we can see, and once we understand the way the sensory consciousness functions, we can see that how mostly what we're seeing is a story made up by our mental consciousness. So, for example, the Buddha would say, in the Buddhist model of the mind, that sensory consciousness is like very narrow in its capacity for cognition. It merely cognizes, eye consciousness cognizes merely shape and colour. It's very limited in its capacity for cognition. Shape and colour, that's it. But what happens, because sensory consciousness and mental consciousness work perfectly and intimately together, because we've practiced to perfection, all in the first millionth of a second, the whole thing is down, you know. There's a delicious divine chocolate cake and it's in the mouth. But eye consciousness is cognizing shape and colour. What that does is that instantly trigger mental consciousness, where you've got all the memories stored. And it triggers the memory, doesn't it? Oh yeah, it kind of zaps through your file cards inside. You come up with, oh, there's the label, chocolate cake, you know. I always think about this. You know, as you're getting older, you do lose your memory, don't you, people? It's embarrassing. Your grandmother told you you would, but you never believed it. Oh, I won't lose my memory. I won't forget names. Forget about it. Oh, my God, my best friends, I'm about to introduce them. Honestly, I'm absolutely mortified. But I haven't yet forgotten the name chocolate cake. When I look at that thing, I don't go, what was that again? Oh, I can't remember. What was it again? I absolutely do not forget that name. Deeply implanted. Memory has not gone about that one. So, okay. Eye consciousness contacts shape and colour. Instant triggering. Mental consciousness, where the computer is, where the programming is, where all the memory is. Chocolate cake label comes up. Oh yeah, that's correct. That's a chocolate cake. You're right. Triggers the memory of having eaten it before. All the memory is stored there. How it was when you had it, the pleasant feeling when it touched the cake, it touched the tongue, went into the mouth. All that's stored. All that memory is stored. All that's fine. That's reasonable. But all of that information is in here, not the eyes. So then because of that information and because of the triggering of the memory of the good feelings, it then triggers this one, which is the cause of all the problem, called attachment. And we're going to go into great detail about these. It triggers the deluded state of mind, the neurotic, greedy, grasping, frantic, I've got to have it, otherwise I'll die state of mind, which is attachment. And that one colours everything. That runs the show now. So that's what then causes the cake to look like delicious divine. Oh my God, how delicious divine, when I eat it I'll get happy, chocolate cake. That one colours it and causes the whole experience to be called that. But all this happens in a millionth of a second, so we make the mistake of thinking our eyes are seeing delicious divine chocolate cake. Do you see what I'm saying, people? Do you see what I'm saying? Okay. It's kind of interesting. Sneaky, tricky thing, you know. So when you see that person you don't like, your eye consciousness is seeing shape and colour. That's about it. The rest of it is based upon the memory and the last time you had the experience of that person, when they punched you in the nose, or the memory from past life. Excuse me, you've never met a person in your whole life and you can't stand the sight of them the moment you see them, isn't it? Or you see this person, you believe there's my soulmate. Oh my God. Because you've got some history from the past, all kind of stored in your computer, you know. You carry it all with you. That's all this stuff that we call instinctive. You know. The way you see people, how they appear to you, is based upon the past history you've got. So all of that is in the mental consciousness. The karmic seeds are stored in the mental consciousness. The perceptions, the memories, the good, the nice feeling, the mean feeling, all of this is the information stored in your mental consciousness that then we think, because it all happens so quickly, is then we think it's just, that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a divine, delicious person. I'm seeing a horrible looking, ugly chocolate cake. Whatever the story might be. We don't think, do we, that we have a story in our mind. We think, not only do we not think we don't have a story, not only do we not think, well, my eyes aren't really seeing that, we actually believe that that thing that's living there is defined. What is that you're seeing, Robina? Oh, I'm seeing a divine, delicious chocolate cake that when I get it, it'll cause me happiness, chocolate cake. We believe that that is that sitting on the plate. Don't we? Well, this is the one. It's not your eyes. What a joke. When you really realise the function of the eye consciousness, it's kind of mortifying. They're just seeing shape and colour. Excuse me. The rest is your opinion. You can't say it's not. When you hear it this way, it's very, very kind of, wow, humbling, you know. The rest is your opinion. Okay, this is the difficult part. Buddha's saying everything we're seeing is an opinion. As Lama Zopa puts it, when you finally realise the true way that things really do exist, I mean, finally, ultimately, I'm not being cosmic here, it just means very subtle, we've got to get to it. He says it's as if there is no chocolate cake. But he says there is. What does exist is so subtle, it's as if it's an illusion. So in other words, Buddha's saying we have in the mental consciousness layers upon layers upon layers upon layers of stories, That every time you strip away one, it reveals the next. You strip away this, it reveals the next. You strip away that, it reveals the next. You've got to go real deep to deconstruct, deconstruct, deconstruct. And it's kind of scary because he's very radical in how far we have to deconstruct. It's like as if there is nothing, but there is. Don't make a mistake. Don't get nihilistic. Don't chuck the baby out with the bathwater. The concept, we can hear, we're intelligent. It's extremely tasty. So this is what we have to remember 1,000,000 times a day when we get caught up in the belief, there's that mean person, there's that gorgeous thing, here's that horrible, ugly, this, that, that's the cause of all my suffering, because that's the drama. That's the view that we hold now in our mind as the truth, because we've practiced it to perfection. So this is why Buddha says we're believing in lies. Our minds, the delusions, are lying to us, and we believe the lie. This is what he means by being in samsara. This is what he means by suffering. And this is all done by our minds. So we better understand them. And once we start this job, it's the funnest job you'll ever do, I swear. Because it's the one that makes the difference. You can change the whole world. You can earn 1 billion, trillion, billion, 27 times a million more than Buffett and Gates together dollars. But if you haven't changed your mind, you're a peanut still. You're useless, miserable, paranoid, depressed, angry, hopeless. You can make the whole world in gold. You can have everybody, the whole 6 billion humans doing what you want. You could even do all of that. If you haven't looked at your mind, nothing changes. Once you work on your mind, everything works. Sanity comes. It's the one job that if we're missing, everything's a nightmare. And this happens to be Buddha's expertise, that's all. I mean, you can take it or leave it, you know. That's your decision. But this is his expertise. This is what he's been talking about for 2,500 years, you know. So then, how do we understand then, what's the logic behind saying that we can remove the negative states from our mind? How can we remove anger from our mind? How can we remove jealousy, depression, anxiety? How? That's the question, isn't it? Because we can see that we do this projecting, but to make the link between that and our feelings, that's a tough one for us in the West. So what's a feeling, you know? Well, remember, you've got mind and you have body. You have mind and you have body. So in this hypothesis here, we are saying the mind is not the body. Yes, they work intimately, interdependently, intimately together. So that encourages us then to know the mental part, because that part is what finally determines even the way the body experiences things. So, right now, okay, so these negative states of mind, which are in their nature absolutely distinct, different from, not the same as, separate from the positive states of mind, have two main characteristics. And one is that they're disturbing. To whom? You. Check up the last time you were jealous, angry, depressed, anxious. Oh my gosh. You didn't say, oh wow, Robina, I was jealous yesterday. It was just great, you know. Oh, I love that anxiety, give me more, you know. Somehow, we do not say that. So we kind of know they're disturbing. But look when it's anger. We know it's disturbing. But then says, well, Buddha says, well, that's good. I understand. I'm glad you see that. Now perhaps you could find a method to try and stop feeling so disturbed. And you'll say, why should I do anything? It's her fault. So first, that's already this view, this dualistic view, which Buddha says is also instinctive in our minds, which we reinforce by saying someone made us and that my mind is my body and all the rest, that causes us to believe, in other words, that the happiness is coming from the chocolate cake, this divine, delicious thing, and that therefore the suffering is coming from her. So yes, I know it's painful. I know it's disturbing. Look at me, I'm crying. I know anger is disturbing. What are you telling me? But what do you think? What do you mean I should do something? She punched me. So we're so insane. We're so schizophrenic, as Lama Yeshe would put it. We're so cut off from our own experiences, so insane, that we know it's painful. But it never occurs to us, I'd better look at this pain and see if I can change it. I just think because she did it to me, it's her fault, therefore she should change. It's a bit like she stabbed me with a knife in my heart. Robina, you'd better pull the knife out. What do you mean? She put it there. That's how we are with our emotions now. That's how pathetic we are, how sad, how insane, how cut off we are from our own self. And that's the deep habit that's come, what Buddha would say, from eons of thinking like this. In other words, the very first practice in Buddhism, the very first level, you can divide it into sort of stages of practice, you know. This is the way they package it in Tibet. Very structured, organised way of packaging the teachings in the same way that we understand when you go learn music or cooking. You do it in an orderly way, don't you? You go grade 1 and then you go grade 2, then you graduate, or whatever, you understand. You learn step by step according to your capability. We don't think of spiritual practice like that normally. We think of just this big weirdo thing of hit and miss, cross your fingers. Buddha, in the Tibetan tradition especially, and this is since the 11th century when this person called Atisha came along from India, Atisha, and he's this great scholar, yogi, master, you know, saint, whatever word you want, from India, where Buddhism was still then hugely flourishing. Well, no, it was slowly dying by then in India, 11th century. Buddha was born 2,500 years ago, so it must have been about, what's that, 500 years before naught. And we're 11th century, that's 1100 plus 5, that's 17. So 1700 years after the Buddha. Already it was declining in India and finally collapsed there. In the 8th century, the 6th century, it was the first time I think Buddhism started to go out of India. People obviously in other parts of Asia were hearing about it, and all the Chinese started to come, you know, to study in India. And then they went back to their own countries and started to develop it there. So the 8th century it started to develop in Tibet. The 21st century it's developing in the United States. So in about the 7th century, 8th century Tibet, the person called Padmasambhava, he was one of the main guys, you know. He's sort of one they all adore and love. He really energized Buddhism, the development of Buddhism in Tibet. So then in the 11th century along comes this person called Atisha, and he was invited by the king to come along and sort of, you know, teach in Tibet. So he could see, broadly speaking, it had been there several hundred years, you know, 300 years, 400 years, 300. But he could see they'd lost the plot a bit, you know. There's all the esoteric, amazing and marvellous teachings here called Tantra. Then there's all the other teachings all over the place. But it was as if they were all practicing music, but someone had thrown in the air all the music and no one knew where the beginning was, and they're all a bit of advanced stuff here and jazz over there and rock and roll here, and no one could put it all together in a coherent package. So it's a bit hard to teach it to others, isn't it? It's quite hard to see where you begin. And this is how we think of spiritual practice in general. So Atisha wrote this little thing. They always write in nice little verses, you know. It's deceptively simple looking. And it was called lamp for the path, the light that leads you on your road, you know. And that's used as the basis ever since for this generic way of presenting the Buddha's teachings in Tibet, called Lam Rim, graded path. I mean, we don't talk like this in our current language, do we? When you go to learn music, you don't say, oh, I'm doing a graded path in music. I mean, you can hear it, it's quaint, it's not wrong. We call it a course. It's just the word we use, isn't it? But we know it's graded, it's gradual. Small first, you're going to get more advanced, until eventually it's the most advanced. We understand this concept, and it's the way we learn absolutely everything. accept our spiritual teachings. We lose our common sense when it comes to that. Well, this is the way, this is what's been developed to an extremely sophisticated level in the Buddhist tradition, say in Tibet, Otherwise, they were medieval. They didn't learn to read and write. They memorised everything in the monasteries. So kind of backward in the ways that we're sophisticated, But these methods for understanding the nature of the universe and how it functions and exists and what the mind is and how to deconstruct it and develop and remove the qualities and become perfect, basically. So this Lam Rim, the very first level of practice, like junior school, is the first level of practice is just don't harm others. Don't lie with your mouth and your body, Your body and speech, let's face it, your body and your speech, your behaviour, in other words, is the interface between you and others, isn't it? You can see this. The body and the speech. And it's the body and the speech that do all the harm. It's what does all the good as well. But look in terms of the problems between us, whether it's Israel and Palestine or whether it's your own relationship with one person. It's your body and the speech that show all the signs, that say the words, that do the punching. You understand? That are uncontrolled. They're the things that cause the problems. So the very first level is zip your lip and keep your hands to yourself. Behave nicely, as your grandmothers would have told you. It's not just superficial. It is superficial, but oh my God, it's profound. Check the world. If we all behaved nicely, there would be no war, no bad-mouthing, no harming. It would be blissful. Just check. So this is not insignificant level of practice. But I suppose in the West, that's all we think there is. And most of the time now we try to behave nicely because we're scared that someone will reject us. So we've got to look nice to other people. So we do it all for the wrong reasons. But we don't know how to go further. We don't know how to look inside, because that's the second level of practice. That's high school. You now start to do the real job of knowing your mind, which is where we've begun, You now know you begin to see your mind. Begin to understand how you think and feel. You start all this deconstructing, because that's the source of it all. Because let's face it, if your mouth says words that are harsh, in your mind you're not thinking loving thoughts, are you? What's in your mind is expressed by the words. If my fist goes out and punches in the nose, at the same time I'm not thinking, oh, I love you so much. I'm sorry, I'm just not. Your punch expresses what's in your mind. Now, our problem is in the West, we don't even know what's in our mind, and before we know it, the words are out the mouth and the fist is there. Oh, what happened, The number of people we know in prison, you talk about and they killed somebody, or they stole something, or whatever, The commonest one, I don't know why I did it. Well, they're not lying. We don't know why we do most things. That's why we get into trouble. Because we have no awareness of what's happening in here. But let's face it, if you have got very uncontrolled behaviour, and look at us all, we're all like babies, 3-year-old bursting into tears and stamping and kicking because we don't get what we want. So we have got uncontrolled behaviour. How, if every time you feel something which you don't notice, but it comes and the fist goes out and the words go crash and you go kick and whatever, and you never control that. How could you possibly be able to even ever notice what's in here? It's already out. The damage is done. So it's obvious we need to control our behaviour. But not just as like a political tool to manipulate people, which is how we use it now, but as the first step in this amazing process of developing yourself. So the recognition we have to get in the very first stages of practice of controlling your body and speech, and then the tentative practice of beginning to understand your mind. The very first reason we have to get for why this is necessary, and this is the one I'm talking about, what we're totally lacking, is because my harmful actions of body, speech and mind harm me. I mean, this is sort of like you've won the lottery when you can get this. And it shows, because we don't get this, how really demented we are. What do you mean I should change? It's her fault. Look at us. Look at the world. I mean, there's a friend of mine, I always quote this, I mentioned last night, in Kentucky, who mentioned this old Catholic guy who comes to visit them. And his daughter had been murdered 30 years before. Rage, guilt, shame, anger, rage, as well as all the other emotions. And we're going to, like we talked last night, how we get these all mixed up. It took him 30 years to realise, he said, that why he was really suffering was his own anger, his rage. That's why he was suffering. Sure, his daughter was dead. His daughter was dead. But he's finally realised that's why he was suffering. Well, that's all Buddha's saying. And so we can see it takes us time to get to see this simple, evident fact that my anger, my depression, my anxiety, not coming from the fact that I've got too much work, not coming from the fact that my boyfriend won't talk to me, which is what we dump it on, so I'm allowed to be anxious because look what he did to me. That's how our little baby mind talks. We're like children. I'm allowed to feel this way. He did that. And then we cling to it and feel righteous in it. It's very bizarre, actually, how our egos work. Don't criticise ourselves. Observe it. So we can see it causes us suffering, but we're desperate to have someone to blame for it. It's my chemicals, I can't help it. It's she did it, I can't help it. It's too much work, I can't help it. So we hold on to our right to be that way, and then we kind of spout it like it's some virtue. It's kind of fascinating. We all do this, we can see. So the first thing we have to see, forget the body and speech one, is that the presence in my mind of anxiety is extremely painful. So I better try and find a way to understand it so I can not be anxious. I mean, sure, work less. Sure, remove yourself from her. She's a maniac. Meanwhile, work on your mind. This is always the point, you know. Very hard to see this. Because the nature of ego, and all this neurotic stuff is just the voices of ego, the irony, the terrible, bitter, sad irony of ego is it loves to be miserable. We love the miserable things. A person who's got anger is dying for a fight all the time. A person who's got a tendency for depression is looking for reasons to get depressed. It sounds cruel to say this, but we have to see this tendency in us. We run like a magnet to the misery. That's the irony of ego. It's kind of fascinating. So the very first step is to develop this compassion for yourself. They don't say it like that in Buddha's terms, but that's the implication. Because if it is true, my anger causes me pain, I need to have enough awareness of my own right to be happy. I need to have enough sense of self-respect, self-worth, to think, this is unbearable, Robina. You can't go on like this, sweetheart. It's breaking your heart. Like you talk with kindness to someone else, not beat yourself. But we're so vindictive, you know, with ourselves. That's why we're so mean to other people. A person who's mean to other people, you can't say they're being kind to themselves. It's impossible. Absolutely impossible. Because the presence in your mind of anger is polluting you right there. So it has to be against yourself as well. It can't not be. It's insane. It's not possible. So we have to stop in our tracks and start to look at our own pain and suffering and seeing our own neuroses and how they cause me pain and how it is unbearable and I want to give up pain and suffering. I'm fed up with it. We're all fed up with it. But if I keep saying it's her fault, I'll never do the right thing. I'll just keep reinforcing it. Because blaming another is part of the cause of why I'm miserable. And if you think about it very simply, just on a technical sense, just technically speaking, if you think that thing over there is the cause of the problem, but in fact it's that one there, and if you keep pointing to this one, you'll never solve the problem, will you? It's like if you look in your car and you think it's the carburettor, but it's really the brakes. You keep pointing to the carburettor. Well, if you keep pointing to the carburettor and keep changing the carburettor, but you never look at the real problem, which is the brakes, you'll never get the problem solved, will you? It's very practical. So if you keep thinking she is the main cause, but in fact it's here, just not talking moralistically, but practically, then you'll never change. Nothing will ever change. And if we look at our lives, practically, if you just take stock of your life, and if you have the mode that says it's her fault and his fault and their fault and this, and it's not fair and it's not I didn't ask to get born and it's all my chemicals and it's my mother and it's my genes and it's the DNA and it's the food, it's the job, it's the boss, whatever. Just track your life back and you'll always see You keep getting more miserable, more angry, more depressed, more jealous. You're not getting better at all. So we ought to, if we have any common sense, check, well, perhaps I've got the wrong analysis here. Perhaps it's the carburetor I should be looking at. Let's try something different here. Perhaps I should be looking at myself. This is always being said here. So the first step, first thing to distinguish, to take as your hypothesis, mind is not your brain. It didn't come from mummy and daddy. Didn't come from a superior being. And to see the implications of this is not some kind of... Buddha's not trying to be fundamentalist and just disagree with somebody. He says the implications of thinking, if you follow it through so deeply that your mind comes from someone else, is absolute paralysis. It is not possible you can do anything. Just give up, Not possible, if you really follow it through. So the implication of your mind being yours is real tasty. Because if it's mine, I can change it. That's the point. Or even thinking about mind being beginningless, not created, and so on, So then within daily life, control your body and speech. Just, control the mouth. Control the body. At least don't do the harm. Don't put it out there. Which doesn't mean suppress it, which is the only mode we know. We either suppress, we live in denial, or we vomit, Vomit it all out or live in denial. They're the only modes we know, because we don't have methods, do we, in our education that help us investigate the way we think and feel. Intellectual, yes. Math, we're geniuses. Emotions, forget it. We're 2 years old still. And then do the job of investigating your mind, uncovering this amazing person, learning. I know it sounds all so corny, but it's simply true. Becoming your own friend, learning to know yourself. Not kidding. We all use those words, and again, that is exactly Buddha's expertise. Knowing ourselves to some stunning degree, to the point where you can transform yourself into this astonishing person, which he says is our natural potential. So this first word, as I said, that's used as it's a synonym for the word negative state of mind. In this discussion, remember, about how to investigate the negative states of mind, given that they're the source of my suffering and I'm fed up with suffering, then obviously I have to better understand them. I better locate what they are like and how they function. Then, one of the terms is disturbing emotion. And like I said, that means disturbing to me. Sure, it disturbs other people if I punch and shout. That's not the discussion here. We're trying to investigate these states of mind and their impact upon me. This is our first step in the wisdom wing. Compassion wing, we're all about others. Here we're all about ourselves. Got to get yourself sorted first. So so I've been pointing out, and it's not too difficult to see that anger, anxiety, jealousy, depression are disturbing, painful, disturbing. And already the implications of this are profound. If we could get this, then in this world, who would ever harm another? Because you wouldn't want to harm yourself, so you wouldn't do it. So it shows, as I said, how cut off from ourselves we are. It's deeply mentally ill, basically, how we all are, So the other term is this one, delusion. And this is the key. Understanding this helps us understand how we can move these negative states from our mind. And it's a big surprise, but that's the point. And then, so okay, just looking at the bare bones of these negative states of mind, as we already suggested, they are stories about something that aren't an accurate story. They're a misconception. They're a wrong assessment. In other words, what does exist in that plate is a chocolate cake. Yep, we can agree. But, the cake that we see, that we believe is what is the cake in its character, is divine, delicious cake that will cause me happiness when I get it. You understand? That's the cake we see, or the mean ugly, or the gorgeous this. So these negative states of mind have the characteristic of being disturbing, but they have this other one of being a liar. And that's the part that's unbelievably difficult to locate. But understanding this even intellectually is extremely helpful. So in general, we can sort of see the idea, how you project. There's me looking at chocolate cake, and there's Sandy looking at chocolate cake. And because she has an aversion to cake, because when she sees it, you know, it triggers the memory of having had it before. It triggers the memory of when she vomited when she ate it the last time. So that memory is in her. So when she sees it now, instead of attachment arising, which is what occurs in my mind, aversion arises in hers based on her history with the cake. Right? Aversion. So it appears to her, what appears to her eyes, chocolate cake, yes. But what she is seeing on that plate is disgusting, revolting chocolate cake in its bones, as such that if you put, you know, like as if when someone made it, they put a spoon of disgustingness in there. But when someone made mine, they put a spoon of deliciousness in there. So mine's vibrating deliciousness, and hers is vibrating ugliness. Now, the trick is, though, it's the same cake. So when she sees it, she has her aversion glasses on. When I see it, I have my, you know, rose-coloured spectacles on, as our grandmas would tell us. We understand these words. We can hear it. So we can see, well, you know, Sandy's right or Robina's right here. But we don't think of it in a scientific sense. We just say, oh, I'm allowed to like what I like, and that's just opinions, you know, that's just how you feel. Whereas if we were being rigorous when it came to facts in scientific terms, you know, we would have to see this is some kind of big fat conflict here. But we don't think of emotions as opinions. We just think it's just the way it is, and we're all allowed to have emotions, and we're all allowed to think what we think. That's how we think. It's very unrigorous, very unscientific. So these unhappy states of mind have this core activity of being a liar. To the extent that this state of mind called attachment is in my mind, or in Sandy's mind, the extent that the state of mind called aversion is in her mind, to that extent the cake appears in a distorted way to us. This is how it works. This is how it works. So, but because it's ancient history in us, because we're totally addicted to this, because it's just instinctively within us from having seen things in this way for so long, because it's instinctive, because we utterly believe that it's not coming from my mind, but it's actually in the cake. And because these states of mind are so instinctive, and because there's this intimate relationship between the body and the mind, then when the states of mind are strong, then we can see the body is involved, isn't it? So when I've got attachment for a person, and then you have contact through your bodies with that person, or contact with the cake, but clearly the cake experience is not as intense as contact with a person. You understand? Look at the feelings in the body that are triggered. Then look at the feelings in the body that are triggered when you have huge rage. It's true, the body is involved, for sure. But because in the West we think the body is the mind, it's the brain, it's the nervous system, it's just how it is, it's just natural. We even say anger's physical. We even say, oh, attachment physical. You know, if we would say that. So when we'd have that amazing experience by having contact with that gorgeous body, we would definitely say that that experience was physical. Well, there is a physical component there. You can't say there's not. But what Buddha's saying is we're making these wrong conclusions about which bit of the mind and the body play which role. We've got our recipe all wrong. So Buddha's saying there is a thing called mind, which is not the body. There are things in the mind called negative states of mind, which are disturbing and are liars. And they are the source of all the drama. So we've got to get down to those. Because whatever is in your mind determines how your body responds. And this is really obvious, but we don't think this. You can be in love with that person, that shape and colour out there. You know, a head, a flat chest, 2 legs, a pokey thing, a couple of pokey things out here. The shape, right? That's it. But you put all the story of this divine person. Oh my God, I've met my soulmate. He is like God incarnate. Wow, amazing. Every kind of atom of his being is divine. The smell, the taste, everything. Look how we exaggerate, you know. Because your eyes are seeing shape and colour here, but look what you think you're seeing. Oh my gosh. So because of that massive attachment in the mind, this triggers all the physical energies. It triggers them. They have these detailed explanations in Buddhist Tantra, which is the basis of Tibetan medicine, of the intimate relationship between the body, you know, the subtle nervous system, how they talk about the chakras and the winds, all this stuff. They're detailed explanations of the subtler physical energies and the relationship between those and the mind, the different states of mind. So when the attachment energy, and the attachment, which is mind, which is a story the mind makes up about something that exaggerates its deliciousness, it causes the object to look delicious. It blinds you, you know. It causes your body to have a nice feeling. Because, of course, there's an intimate relationship between your body and mind. That's obvious. That's okay. But it's your mind that does it. So when you see that person, you practically faint with pleasure, isn't it? So, of course, you think it's physical. And then Buddha says, mind is not physical. Attachment is not physical. And you can change it. Well, first of all, we get sad because we think, oh, if I give up attachment, I'm going to give up pleasure. No, mistake. But how can I change a physical experience? When you have your anger and you're raging and the spit's coming out and the tears are coming and the nose is coming, spitting and the heart's beating and the blood's racing, everyone will see that anger is physical, isn't it? You think, how can I change anger? It's physical, it's an emotion, it's a feeling, it's so ingrained, it's so intuitive, it's so instinctive. It's impossible to see it. Because that gross physical expression and that emotional feeling and the panic is just the grossest tip of the iceberg of this ancient habit of the lie called aversion that exaggerates the ugly aspects of the person, the event, the thing, the cake, whatever. So, of course, there's a relationship between mind and body, but the root of it is the mind. And the proof is simple. You know it every day. You have attachment in the mind, the excitement and the over-exaggerating and the anticipation and the expectation, all that's part of attachment, for the cake. All excited, you know, isn't it? And like you can see it nakedly in a 3-year-old. They've got no control over their body. They're jumping up and down, all excited and rushing in and get the piece. And then when she comes along and gets it, bursting into tears, Mommy, she took the cake. Well, we're still doing that, except we have a bit better behaviour. Little 3-year-olds crying in there, you know. Do you understand? So the emotion, the physical, is huge. But we've got to get it down to the bare bones of the attachment. So when the attachment is in the mind, which is the part that causes the cake to look divine and delicious, that causes you to believe that when you get it, you'll get happy, that causes you to rush out with your hand and put it in the mouth, full of expectation, full of anticipation, waiting for the happiness to come. Then you put the second piece in because you haven't got the happiness yet, so you're still super excitedly anticipating it. And you put a third piece in, kind of getting a bit sad now, because your stomach's getting fuller and you know there's this awful conflict coming where you've got to stop. Because why? Because now the cake looks revolting, and if you ate more, you'd vomit. Right? So, this is the point. This is such simple logic, but because we're so caught up in this lie, it just sounds stupid, you know. Right in that experience is the proof that the cake doesn't exist as you really saw it, but it's a fantasy made up by your mind. It is not the cause of your happiness, and it also proves that it's a story made up by your mind, and that according to what's in your mind is according to how the thing appears. So, Buddha says, if the cake does exist as it appears to your attached mind, that is to say delicious, and the cause of my happiness, if that is the truth, then it is logical that the more you eat it, the happier you will get. It's just logic. We don't like to hear this, but it's fact. Simple logic. Well, check your experience. The more you eat, remember? I mean, we'd all be in bliss every day. We'd be completely, utterly in bliss every second of the day if this were true. But look at the truth. Within 5 minutes, you feel depressed, you have a stuffed stomach, forget all about happiness. It's out the window. If you did get it, you missed it. What happened? What happened to the happiness? You know, where was it? I was looking for it, waiting for it to come. It didn't come. All I got was a stuffed stomach, and now the cake looks disgusting, and if I ate it, I would vomit. Isn't this our experience, people? Well, Buddha, all he's doing is not trying to be mean to us. He's trying to get us to see what we already know and to learn something from this. And in just this experience is enough for you to go off and meditate for 5 years or a month or a year and get enlightened. And I am not kidding. So, that person who is the cause of all my happiness, who is totally divine, who is my soulmate, finally I found happiness. Now finally I found happiness. What happened? 6 months later, you cannot stand the sight of him. He is disgusting. He hasn't aged much, no fatter, no grey hairs, no wrinkles, still the same person. But look now how he appears to your eyes when you look at him. Ugly. The sound of his voice freaks you out. You're so distressed, you're angry, you're hurt, you're jealous. You want to kill him. So that feeling that your body experienced, remember, this is proof that all this stuff is not physical finally. The feelings that your body experienced when you had contact with him, which were just unsurpassable bliss, right? To get even within a mile of him makes you shake with anger. Forget about, nothing is blissful now. There's nothing blissful happening in your body now, is there? It's just disgust. So it proves, this is so simple, the cake and this experience prove that it comes down to how you see things. It's just obvious. It's not cliched, it's not rocket science, it's just obvious. If you see a person as ugly, you won't feel good, and they will look, that will trigger this horrible feeling in you. So all you poor men especially, because poor men can't help it, isn't it? You just can't help your feelings, can you? Especially when it comes to sex. It's always just poor men, they can't help it. With all these bits that stand up, So then they then try to cut them off and make you whatever you are to try and stop all these sex maniacs, And so they all say it's physical. But excuse me, it's not physical. It's their berserk attachment. Not just men, everybody, but you can sort of see the cliched point I'm making. Attachment, so, and we're going to talk about the karmic one here, fully programmed from the time they were born with this powerful, exaggerated, lying fantasy story that they, in their case, some of them, dump on a certain shape. Some onto shapes with flat chests and dangly things, and others with lumps on their chest, depending on the karma, So you dump it onto that shape. And then you utterly believe that that is the cause of all your happiness. So you think day and night. Anybody who's got strong attachment, one of the signs of attachment, this is very, very humbling, is that you think about the object when it's not there. Join the club here. This is the nature of our attached minds. We're living in a fantasy world about what isn't there. Wanting it, yearning for it, wishing we did have it, or wishing, we didn't have it. The angry ones. We live in this fantasy world. That's what fantasies are. And you can look at a person who's really like a sex maniac, speaking crudely. Their mind is full, obsessed with attachment for this type of object. That's all attachment is. Whether it's a body or a cake, there's no difference in the attachment. It's just that, cakes don't mind if you stomp on them. Humans are a bit different. But that's all attachment is. But we make this big distinction between sexual attachment and attachment for cakes or alcohol. The state of mind called attachment is identical. What the object is according to your connections and your karma, That's all. So it's not the body. Attachment's not the body. It won't help you cutting out there. As one person said, I remember reading, who had his, what do they call it? What do they call? Neuter animals. You don't neuter men, but what's the polite term they use? Castrate. Oh, that's a polite term. Yeah, okay. Castrate. Okay? Don't girls do that to boys all the time? Aren't we the ones who castrate you poor boys? So, because we think it's physical, we castrate a person. But as one guy said, one pedophile, I still have the same feelings. What's the difference? It's proof. It's not physical. You just can't get it up, that's all. So it's sort of obvious it's not the physical. But it's obvious the physical does the harm, clearly. It's obvious there is physical feeling, obvious. But because we think the mind is physical, then you're stuck here. What can you do? You're stuck, what can you do? People even who believe the mind is physical still see that therapy works. Changing your mind helps. But we don't put the two and two together because we're stubbornly believing the mind is the brain. The mind is the brain, These things argue with that. So it's proof. You didn't force yourself to change your mind and think that person's now ugly. It just happened because of your relationship and he didn't do what you wanted and you started to get angry and now you hate him. So you've changed your mind, people. So now he looks ugly to you. Well, all those pedophiles have to do is start being trained, what do they call it? They call it behavioural therapy. It's true. Once you understand it is your mind, okay, it's hard when you're really obsessed, whether it's cake or money or little boys. It's hard, but this is the point. When you can learn to get down and change your mind, and we're talking long term and we're talking real subtle here, but that's the principle, then you change everything else. Your body doesn't respond in the same way. It's just obvious. But it's the hardest job we'll ever do. Because as Lama Zopa says, we believe now in our karmic appearances. The way things appear to us now is from the habit of countless lives of seeing them that way. So, you tell a pedophile that it's got nothing to do with a little boy's body, what they feel, they think you're insane. You tell a person who's obsessed with food that it's not the food that's doing it, it's how you're seeing it. We can see it, look at us, we can hear it. But look how our experiences lie to us. It doesn't seem like that. That's why we're all victims. That's why we are victims of the little boy's body, of the cake, or whatever it might be. Because we believe in our own stories and we're like these 1-year-olds, So it's a tough job we're talking, but you've got to start at the basics. Get your theories right. Okay, we're talking Buddha's ones here, you take them as a hypothesis, but it's certainly coherent. It fits, as a nice little presentation. So I want to ask some questions about what we've just discussed. If you'd like. You don't have to. You can have a break instead. Where are we? Okay. Yes.
My mind finds it a little easier to be encouraged by what I guess I call the simplification of Buddhism as against the kind of mystic perfection of completely cleansing the mind of all the attachments.
Why would you call it, can you clarify the term mystic perfection?
Well,
why mystic?
I guess I was raised as a Catholic.
Yes,
okay.
Sure. Yes.
And I find
good.
at times I find Buddhism, especially Tibetan Buddhism, shockingly familiar.
Oh, absolutely. It's very interesting, isn't it?
Yes,
it's very
is.
Interesting, isn't it?
At times I'm ready to flee.
I know, it's very fascinating.
You can understand. Okay.
But the difference is here, Buddha says, don't believe it, and you prove it to yourself. That's the challenge.
Well, very good, and I accept that, and I hope I grasp that.
Because it's either right or wrong.
Well, in the holding up of the saints, they were perfect, or even the nuns were perfect, but there was a place for the laity that was, there was a distinction between the saints and perfection and leading a rough-hewn but adequately good life. And I'm thinking of A Course on Miracles, simplified by the Center for Attitudinal Healing, and it helped. The simplification or positive psychology seems more helpful to me than the invitation to become a Buddha or an invitation to become a practitioner of a Buddhist lineage.
So what would be the simplification? Give an example of this. What you're saying, what would be the thing that you find more appealing than that?
Having someone have less anger toward me, rather than, I'd settle for 10%, 15, 20.
Okay.
Having someone, intimate friend, have less anger toward me, rather than ask or expect the anger to disappear.
Well, it's just a question of degree, isn't it? Yeah. That's all it is. And so the thing is, whether you have the capability to become to be a weekend cyclist or like Lance Armstrong. For me, once you've established that you can become some kind of cyclist, that's the real point. It's up to you whether you want to go all the way to be like Lance. But the same principle applies, because whether you can become a weekend cyclist or like Lance, the real point is that you can change. And this stuff that we're talking here about karma and the mind not being physical, not created, that's meant to be the basis to give you the courage to know that I can change even a little bit. So that's up to you how far you want to go. But the capability to change this much or this much is based upon the same premises. That's the real point. You see my point here? Yeah. So yes, that's cool. Go for it. Yes.
Okay. I was thinking, as we're children, a lot of times it's someone else who defines us, and we believe that. So,
that's right.
So now I quite honestly, right now, I feel like the little child who is never allowed to explore and to be who I should have been.
Sure.
So how is that fair? Last night you were saying we can't blame mommy, we can't blame,
Sure.
but is it? So at this point, I'm thinking, is it fair? Well, if as a child you're not able to define yourself, someone else defines you,
That's
you
right.
for
Absolutely.
you.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying
Well,
to come
okay,
to
I
terms
understand
with.
totally. I mean, the sort of don't blame mummy, I'm meaning in the long-term sense of establishing that your mind is yours and comes from beginningless time, and the due to karma, and we haven't begun to discuss that yet, and I will, that you even find your way to your present mother's womb. So kind of like our karma, we create the course to get that mother even. So whether she's an abuser or a kind one, even that's to do with us in the past. And we're going to go into that one. But in ordinary terms, given that that is your mother, and that they do define us, it's true. And I can see, let's say, I can use myself as the example. You know, in our family, 7 kids, I was always the loudest, angriest, most volatile one, right? So I can see it was very quick. Robina came out angry. My mother can tell you that, you know. It didn't have to take too long to see that he's the angry one, right? So there it is already. Robina's mind has a tendency for anger in it. She expresses it quite quickly. So very quickly, she gets labelled the angry one. So very soon, of course, that's what the reinforcement that I'm getting. And also that then reinforces that part of myself. And then because we have this ego, this unhappy part of ourselves, and we're again going to go more into detail how that functions, the self-pity part of me, you know, oh, it's not fair, they're always blaming me, which was true. I could tell the passive-aggressives from 50 feet away. I knew those girls were angry, but they didn't express it. They were the goodies and I was the baddie. So I could even intuitively know all this as a kid, you know. But so you can see very quickly fell into this pattern. And then I was seen as the angry one. So I reinforced that part of myself. This is true. This is how we all are. So in the good way too, this is how it works. You know, if we've got really marvellous mothers who are highly advanced practitioners who really understand the mind, and you understand, they're going to see our minds well and they're going to reinforce in a positive way. So then we can then they'll slowly we will then allow ourselves to wean ourselves from that. And by giving them that positive reinforcement, we start to define ourselves in the right way. So we all walk up, it's true, we all kind of grow up as these kind of poor emotional cripples. But in the end, it's true, you've got to look, of course you've got to look at all the different factors out there. You've got to look at the water and the soil and the sun and everything, because they are crucial factors in the growth of that tree. But you can't just say it's only those. You've got to, and it's not just the seed, they're interdependent. But the one you can work on in terms of ourself is the mind. I can't make my mother change. I can't make, you know, my father not be the way he is. I can't get that person to love me more or less. We'd never stop trying. But the real key, the secret here to the Buddhist one is, this is true, of course they play a role. There's no doubt that your mother abused you, your father raped you. Yeah, we can prove this as a fact. And of course that helped determine who you are. But the miracle is, I can still change. I can look inside, take responsibility for what I am now, and then the karmic one reinforces responsibility for even how come I got those parents, and we're going to go into this, so that I can change. That's the real point. So of course they play a role, and we need to factor those in. But the emphasis has to be, okay, given that, let's see what I can do about it. Isn't it? That's the one. That's the practical, mature, marvellous, hopeful attitude, isn't it? And that's all we're talking here.
I think the sad thing is...
Yeah, just talk right into the front of it.
I think the sad thing is that it takes a long... Well, for me,
Yes, it does.
it took a long time
Yeah.
to come to that realization. And you also you mentioned depression, and
Yeah.
I was reading about depression in the book, and I'm wondering how, I mean, there are people who are depressed, and you know, society has said it's a chemical imbalance now. For me, I feel like I was depressed my whole life. Is that something that was
Sure.
imposed on me,
I
or is that
understand.
something I was born with? Like
No,
you said,
yeah, I understand, exactly. See, again, this one comes down to this fundamental point that Buddha's making, and that your mind is not physical, that it's yours, comes from before, programmed with your past actions. And we're going to talk about karma and how the mechanics of it, how that just functions. And so the point here is to start to look at how, therefore, what's in my mind, keep it there. You might want to talk more. That what's in my mind, we have to establish what is mine and what is not. We have to establish. So we can say, using that view, that there are certain chemicals in the body, and then we can see the proof that if you boost your serotonin, isn't it? You boost your serotonin, so that impacts upon your depression. So that's not rocket science. Right. If I put my clothes on a warm day, it stops the shivering, and my mind can become more content. There's a relationship between physical and mental. So you go to your Tibetan doctor, he'll feel your pulses. And he's basing all his stuff on the Buddhist model, which is your mind is not physical, depression is mind, it's not physical, anger is mind, it's not physical, attachment is mind, it's not physical, anxiety is mind, it's not physical, etc. But it is connected to the body. So he's going to feel your pulses, and at the subtle level, how they talk, he'll feel the imbalance of the physical energies. So then those particular, if he gives you your herbs, they'll calm the physical energies down. And because there is a relationship between your mind and your emotions and your body, then your mind will have the space to change. It's just another way of saying it. There are other chemical imbalances. That's what they call it. They call it serotonin. Well, in the Buddhist one, they call it earth, air, fire, water. So, of course, but as long as you keep positing, your mind is mental, not physical, and then your physical is physical, but they're related. So you change one and now you can let the impact upon the other. So this is why now they're talking in the West about the plasticity of mind. Well, Buddha's, that's all his point is. The mind is utterly plastic because it ain't the body. So now they're finding, because in all these last 20 years or so, this organisation called Mind and Life, having conferences with His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, and the best brains in the West on the neurobiology and this and that, and psychiatry and psychology and metaphysics, and not metaphysics, all the physical sciences. There's been these wonderful conversations, and they're all published, I think, and they're getting bigger and bigger every year. And so because of those discussions, there are all these wonderful experiments going on. And so now there's findings that's fairly straightforward. They're sticking on things on the brains of these Tibetan meditators. And so by these people just sitting down, doing their meditation on compassion or doing their meditation on whatever, they're seeing this radical change in the brain. So they're not cutting things out, doing lobotomies here. You're changing your thoughts. So like but this is, again, reinforcing this Buddhist approach. Work on your mind. You have attachment for somebody, your body feels great. You have aversion for somebody, your body feels disgusting. It ain't rocket science. So once we can hear this, the lesson is, oh, you mean I can change my mind, therefore I'll be able to change my body. How fascinating. Also change your body. It can help impact upon your mind. No problem. The trouble with the Western approach is if it is my body, and I was made this way, and it is a chemical imbalance, what can I do about it? That's the paralysis that comes very often. It reinforces the victim ego, the victim thing. It's not blame. You see, again, the thing is here, we're so used to thinking in religious terms of blame and guilt and shame and bad and and so we'll do anything to avoid blame. I can't help it, it's my chemicals, because we don't want to feel like it's my fault. But there's no concept like that in Buddhism. There's no concept of, because there's no one up there pulling the strings. There's no one who made us do anything. There's no blame. They're neurotic states of mind. Blame and guilt have the same symptoms, actually. And we'll talk about that. So once we can have the courage to want to find the facts, then it gives you this internal courage to know, wow, guess what? Yeah, I had a lousy father and a lousy mother, and I was blamed wrong, and I was on death row for 17 years. I mean, there's one woman I read about in a yoga magazine. On death row, 17 years, innocent, gets out eventually. Unbelievable. She decided, nothing I could do. I could change nothing. And you think about that. I mean, we get depressed if someone accuses us of saying something we didn't say, breaking a cup we didn't break. Can you imagine going on to death row without having done something wrong? So she said, finally, I realised I couldn't change anything but my own mind. So I decided, I'm not a monk. I'm not a prisoner. I'm a monk. I'm not in a cell, I'm in a cave. So she proceeded to become a happy, marvellous human being. I mean, how courageous can you get? So it might be your chemicals, honey. You can change your mind. It might be the prison is wrong. You can still change your mind. This is the miracle. So you've got to have some courage to do that. So you don't have to even think about karma or reincarnation. Did God make me? Did my mother make me physical brain? Or really to do this? But all I'm doing is giving the big picture, because the more we look at these things, the more we see that we've got these instinctive assumptions. God made me, my mother made me, it's not, and therefore it's not fair, sort of thing. Whereas if we think in the bigger picture, it can help us get the courage to realise logically, okay, I can change my mind because it's mine. But you don't really have to even think that. People who go to therapy and change their minds, they don't think about whether their mind's a brain or not. We can see, even without thinking whether your mind's a brain, that you can be angry or not angry according to your choice if you're really brave. Then who cares? So whichever method works to help us have the courage to know, no matter what the external circumstances are, I can still change my mind. That's the miracle. Do you see my point?
Yes. And that's why I'm here.
There you go. Yeah, go. Okay, darling girl. Speak to me.
I think I heard you say about a half hour ago that the mind, or maybe it's the ego, actually prefers the negative state.
The ego, yeah, the delusions in us, the unhappy, sad, unhappy, poor little injured, self-pity me states of mind, which is sounds a bit cruel, but if we look at all, we've got to investigate this and see.
It's
But I
almost
think
like the default state.
It's just about, that's right, exactly. And that's like so instinctive, so habitual, this painful, sad sense of poor me. If we look so carefully, if we look underneath anger and depression or jealousy or anxiety, and even anger, or even arrogance, there's this sad little kind of injured little me in there who's badly done by. That's not trying to be cruel about us. If we really look at that carefully. I mean, I use this always as an example. 27 people can say you're a nice person. You're desperate to hear it. You're hungry for them to say it again, but you don't believe a word of it. Oh, yeah, you know. One person criticises you. Which one do you run to like a magnet? Just check it, our own example. We believe it 100% because that's already what we think ourselves, the deluded part of us. Not the good part of us, the deluded part. We've got all these different voices inside, if you like. There's not one big coherent I-ness in there, that's good or bad, which is how we think. There's little pieces, Like you've got a bunch of fingers and they all do their job to be a nice hand. Well, there's all these bits and pieces in our mind that do the job of being me. So we're trying to distinguish the bits that cause the suffering here, and they're the negative ones, and they have these characteristics, like I'm saying, of being delusional, of fantasies, and miserable, and fearful. They're all the unhappy ones. So we've got to learn to distinguish the bits. You understand my point? So yes, self-pity is those characteristics of those. But the positive parts of us, the love, the kindness, the courage, the goodness, the wish to be beneficial, you understand? The truth, the harmonious part of us, they're not neurotic, they're not miserable, they're not self-pity, and they're the source of all the happiness. We just got to grow those bits, Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. So you have to work extra hard, like to purify.
Oh, honey child, that's exactly right. Extra hard, every minute of the day. I mean, in the beginning, it's like using all these muscles you've never used before, so it's exhausting. You think, how can I keep doing this? But like anything, you get used to it. And soon you'll turn into Arnie, You look like Arnie eventually. You grow all the muscles. It'll be great. It's just a question of habit. They have this lovely saying in Tibetan. We say, practice makes perfect. Well, they say, nothing gets more difficult with familiarity. So it's kind of encouraging. It can't get more difficult. Phew. What a relief. Maybe practice makes perfect is too much, Maybe you don't want that one. But you can say, it can't possibly get more difficult. It can only get easier as I keep doing it. So then that gives us a courage, And that's how come we're so good at anger and jealousy and depression. We really have practice has made perfect. We run to it and just do it perfectly now, without effort, Look at us. Someone else. Maybe. Oh, where are you? Okay, sweetheart. Yes.
I want to ask about the mind-body sort of brain connection.
Good. Yes. Go.
I worked as a special ed teacher with severely handicapped students, and some of my students didn't have all parts of their brain.
Yes, absolutely.
And like people that are autistic, they start out with skills and then they lose them for reasons. And for me, I've got pain, and I've been working with biofeedback, and I tend to be more volatile than
Yes,
other
exactly.
people.
Yes,
so
yes.
I'm wondering, is that karma? Because some of those people without, like you say, without an eye you can't see.
That's right.
Without all parts of your
Yes.
brain.
The parts of your mind can't function. Absolutely, of course it is. So we're going to go into this one of karma, why we are, what are the causes and conditions for us to be this package. Of course we're going to look into this. We'll
So
look into this.
You talked about your anger
Yes.
and that part of that could be volatility. Where do you know what's your mind? Like, I don't think everybody can be Lance Armstrong, so accepting what you can be, if that's, you know, because
Okay.
I don't have the body to be Lance Armstrong.
No, I know. I'm just using that as an analogy. So the thing, this is where we have to think about, and this is the big picture one again in Buddhism, looking very deeply into the very nature of mind, into the nature of good qualities and bad qualities, and how logically the good qualities define us and thus can be naturally grown, and how the negative qualities are delusional and can be removed. On the basis of this, we can then deduce that we can all become perfect, which indeed you don't have to think if you don't want. It's a logical deduction, thinking about it. That's up to us to think in that way, but that will be the thinking you would do. So that doesn't mean you can all do it in a week, you know. Mozart came into this life, using the Buddha's view, Mozart came into this life with a lot of music inside him already from having practiced before.
Right.
That's how come he could become Mozart. Some of us might not have that much potential. It's sort of like we've all got the same potential, but we've all developed it to different degrees, so we come into this life with a certain amount of development of it, or lack of. That's the point about the nature of mind, finally, the bottom line, about all minds and what they are and what defines them and how they can be. Do you see what I'm saying? You come into life with different levels of practice, that's all.
Is it different levels of practice
Yeah.
or different levels of
No,
potential?
not potential. No, that's what I'm saying. The potential is the same. And that's what I said before. The way to think about that is to look into what Buddha's saying mind is and how goodness is innate and defines it, is at the core of our being, and how the negative states don't and how they can be removed. That's the thinking to do to get to see how, by definition, mind has the potential to be perfect. Any mind.
So
That's the point.
It's the perfection of the mind, not of your abilities. Because if you didn't have legs, you couldn't be Lance Armstrong.
Abilities, we're talking about the potential of the mind. Because finally Lance Armstrong, it's his mind that makes him a good cyclist. He also happens to have the body. We're talking, but that's a thing that depends upon the body. I agree with you. We're talking here mind, though, not the body. We're talking mind. Qualities of the mind. Goodness, love, compassion, wisdom, joy, all the positive qualities of mind that are mental states. The Buddha would say they can be developed to perfection based upon this type of thinking I was suggesting we look at. Go on.
So then the mind is enlightenment and the body is running the race.
If you're thinking of Lance Armstrong,
Yeah.
you mean. So to stop using that analogy then.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. No, all I mean was because that's in the context of cycling.
Uh-huh.
We might have to use the Mozart analogy in terms of the ordinary skills that we know. I'm using just as an analogy for the idea that we can develop certain potentials within us, as opposed to the way we tend to think, oh, I can't do it, it's not possible. So if we get down to the Buddhist view, we are talking about what is mind, which is not body. I'm going to go into more detail about, in the way they talk in the more esoteric teachings about the relationship between mind and body, and it'll expand all this stuff for you.
So it's not enlightenment that's the potential of the mind?
Enlightenment is a word that's used to refer to a mind that is fully developed in the positive qualities and absolutely free of the negative. Yes, the mind.
Okay.
We're talking mental qualities. Yeah. So we'll go into more detail. Do you want a break now, you people? I think it's meant to be a break, isn't it? We're going to have lunch at 12:30. You have a 15, 20-minute break. I think so. Don't you think? Okay, one of the things I want to say, for however long you're here, for the morning or for the afternoon or for the 2 days, whatever, to make it as seamless and as productive as possible, you've got two options. You can talk about the weather, talk about your hubby, talk about George Bush, but try not to. Do that later. If you want to talk, make the topic in the context of this stuff, so it makes it beneficial. Make it like a discussion group, but have fun too, don't be all serious and boring. Or if you prefer, you don't have to talk. So we have this deep impulse sometimes just to speak because there's somebody there. We feel we're compelled to. Don't feel compelled to. If you want to speak, speak about this stuff. If you want to be quiet and process it internally, that's your business. Don't have any worry about, what people think. Do what you like. You're allowed to be silent. That's like the retreat mode. And I want that in the evenings anyway. I forgot to say it last night. So don't talk if you don't want to. But if you want to,